1994, Los Angeles. A Saturday night in late October. The mansion in Beverly Hills was glowing like a small city. 400 people filled the garden and the halls, champagne glasses clinking, laughter echoing off marble floors. It was the kind of party where every face was famous, where every handshake was worth $1 million, where everyone smiled at everyone else while secretly wondering what they could get from them. This was Hollywood at its finest, and its fakest. Clint Eastwood didn't want to be there. He told his agent 3 times that he wasn't coming, but the host was a studio head who'd greenlit Unforgiven 2 years earlier, and sometimes in this business, you show up even when you don't want to. That's the price of making the movies you actually care about. So Clint stood near the back of the garden, nursing a whiskey he'd barely touched, watching the circus from a safe distance. He was 64 years old. He'd been in this industry for 4 decades. He'd seen enough parties to last 10 lifetimes, and they all looked the same to him now. Same smiles, same lies, same desperation dressed up in expensive suits. He was planning his exit. 10 more minutes, he told himself. Say goodbye to the host, make up an excuse about an early morning, disappear into the night. Simple. That's when he saw Robert De Niro walking toward him. De Niro was moving through the crowd with purpose, not stopping to chat with anyone, not getting pulled into conversations. His eyes were locked on Clint. Something in his expression made Clint's instincts sharpen. This wasn't a casual hello. This was something else. The 2 men had never been close. They'd met a handful of times over the years at award shows and industry events, exchanged polite words, shook hands, moved on. They existed in different orbits of the same universe. De Niro was the method actor, the transformer, the man who disappeared into roles so completely that you forgot who he really was. Clint was the minimalist, the reactor, the man who brought himself to every role and made it work through sheer presence. Critics had compared them for years. Magazine articles had been written about their different approaches. Some called De Niro the superior artist. Others said Clint's restraint was its own kind of genius. Neither man had ever publicly commented on the other's work. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. Now De Niro was standing 3 feet away, and Clint could see something in his eyes that he hadn't expected. Intensity, urgency, and something else underneath, something that looked almost like pain. "Clint," De Niro said, "I need to talk to you." "Bobby." Clint nodded, keeping his voice neutral. "What's on your mind?" "Not here." De Niro glanced around at the crowd, at the people pretending not to watch them. "Somewhere private. It's important." Clint studied him for a moment. In 40 years of Hollywood, he'd learned to read people. It was a survival skill. And right now, everything about De Niro's body language said this wasn't a business conversation. This was personal. "There's a study inside," Clint said. "3rd door on the left past the kitchen. I'll meet you there in 5 minutes." De Niro nodded once and walked away without another word. Clint watched him go, then finished his whiskey in one long swallow. Whatever this was, he had a feeling he was going to need it. The study was dark when Clint entered, lit only by a single lamp on a desk cluttered with scripts and contracts. De Niro was already there, standing by the window looking out at the party lights in the garden below. He didn't turn around when Clint closed the door. "You ever think about Sergio Leone?" De Niro asked. The question hit Clint like a punch to the chest. He hadn't been expecting that. Not even close. Sergio Leone had been dead for 5 years now. Heart attack in 1989, just before he was supposed to start his biggest project. Clint hadn't spoken about him publicly since the funeral. Hadn't really spoken about him privately either. Some things were too complicated for words. "Sometimes," Clint said carefully. "Why?" De Niro finally turned around. His face was half in shadow, but Clint could see enough. This wasn't casual curiosity. This was something that had been eating at De Niro for a long time. "Because he talked about you," De Niro said. "When we were making Once Upon a Time in America, he talked about you a lot." Clint felt his jaw tighten. He knew what was coming. He'd heard the quotes, read the interviews. Leone calling him a block of marble. Leone saying he could only act with or without a hat. Leone dismissing everything they'd built together as if it meant nothing. "I know what he said," Clint replied, his voice flat. "I read the same interviews you did." "No." De Niro shook his head. "You don't know. You know what he said to journalists. You don't know what he said to me. Privately. When the cameras weren't rolling and he wasn't performing for reporters." Something shifted in the room. The air felt heavier. "What did he say?" Clint asked. De Niro walked to a leather chair and sat down heavily, like a man carrying a weight he'd been holding for too long. He gestured for Clint to sit. After a moment, Clint did. "We were in Rome," De Niro began. 1983. Middle of the shoot for Once Upon a Time in America. It was brutal. Sergio was, you know how he was, obsessive, demanding. Every shot had to be perfect. Every detail had to mean something. We were all exhausted, but he was the most exhausted of all because he carried the whole thing in his head. Clint nodded. He remembered that feeling from the trilogy. Leone's sets were chaos on the surface, but underneath, every single element was precisely calculated. It was maddening and brilliant at the same time. "One night we finished shooting late," De Niro continued. 3 a.m. Everyone went home, but Sergio asked me to stay. He had a bottle of wine. We sat in his office, just the two of us, and he started talking. About his career. About his regrets. About the things he wished he'd done differently. De Niro paused, and Clint saw him swallow hard. "He talked about you for almost an hour." Clint said nothing. He couldn't. His throat had closed up. "He told me about meeting you for the first time in Spain. About how nobody in Hollywood would touch you because you were just a TV actor. About how he saw something in you that nobody else saw. He said..." De Niro's voice cracked slightly. "He said discovering you was the proudest moment of his career. Not the awards, not the critical acclaim. Finding Clint Eastwood and showing the world what you could do. That's what he was most proud of." The words hung in the air. Clint felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept sealed for 30 years. Then, why did he say those things? Clint asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The block of marble, the two expressions, the yawning. Why did he spend years telling everyone I couldn't act? De Niro leaned forward. "Because you broke his heart." The silence that followed was absolute. "You turned down Once Upon a Time in the West," De Niro said. "He wanted you in that opening scene. Wanted to kill off the man with no name in the first 10 minutes as a way of saying goodbye. Of closing that chapter so you could both move on to new things. When you said no, he felt like you were rejecting him. Like everything you'd built together meant nothing to you. That's not..." Clint started, then stopped. He didn't know what to say. "He told me he waited for you to call," De Niro continued, "after you turned it down. He thought you'd explain, that you'd tell him why. But you never did. You just moved on, made other movies, built your career in America, and he felt abandoned." Clint closed his eyes. He remembered that decision. He remembered thinking the role was beneath him, that dying in the opening scene was a waste of his time. He remembered his agent telling him it was a bad career move. He remembered never once considering what it might mean to Leone. The insults were his way of protecting himself, De Niro said. If he could convince the world that you weren't special, then maybe it wouldn't hurt so much that you'd left. That's what he told me. Those exact words. If I can make people believe he was never that good, maybe I'll start believing it too. Did he believe it? Clint asked. De Niro shook his head slowly. No, he never did. That night in Rome, he told me you were the most naturally cinematic actor he'd ever worked with. He said the camera loved you in a way that couldn't be taught or learned. It was just there. A gift. And he said he'd spent 20 years trying to find someone else with that same gift, and he never did. Clint felt wetness on his cheeks. He didn't try to wipe it away. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked. "He's been dead for 5 years. Why tonight?" De Niro reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was old, yellowed, the edges worn from handling. "Because he wrote you a letter, just before he died. He gave it to me and asked me to deliver it when the time was right." De Niro held it out. "I've been carrying it for 5 years, trying to figure out when that was. Tonight, when I saw you standing alone at that party, looking like you wanted to be anywhere else, I knew. The time is now." Clint stared at the envelope. His name was written on the front in Leone's distinctive handwriting. Bold strokes, confident lines. The handwriting of a man who knew exactly what he wanted. "He made me promise to watch you read it," De Niro said. "Don't ask me why. That's just what he wanted." Clint's hands were shaking as he took the envelope. He turned it over, saw the seal was still intact. In 5 years, De Niro had never opened it. He'd kept a promise to a dying man, carried this weight for half a decade, waiting for the right moment. Clint broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was shakier than on the envelope. Leone must have written this when he was already sick, when his body was failing him. "My dear Clint," the letter began, "I am writing this because I know I will never have the courage to say it to your face. We are both proud men. Too proud, maybe, and pride has cost us something precious. I have spent 20 years pretending I don't miss you, telling journalists that you were limited, that you were merely a star while others were artists. I said these things because the truth was too painful to admit. The truth is that I have never worked with anyone who understood me better. The truth is that those 3 films we made together were the best years of my life. The truth is that when you walked away, something inside me broke, and I never figured out how to fix it. I know why you turned down Once Upon a Time in the West. You wanted to grow. You wanted to prove you were more than the man with no name. You wanted to build something new, not keep repeating the past. I understand that now. I didn't understand it then. I was selfish. I wanted to keep you. I wanted to make films with you until we were both too old to work. I had dreams, Clint. So many dreams. I wanted us to make a film about the siege of Leningrad. I wanted us to adapt Don Quixote, with you as the knight and Eli as Sancho Panza. I wanted us to grow old together, making movies that mattered. When you left, those dreams died, and I blamed you for killing them. I am sorry. I am sorry for every cruel word I said. I am sorry for trying to diminish you in the eyes of the world. I am sorry for letting my pain turn into something ugly. You were never a block of marble. You were the best actor I ever directed, and I was a fool to pretend otherwise. If you are reading this, it means I am dead. It means I never found the courage to tell you this myself. It means De Niro kept his promise. Here is what I want you to know. I forgive you for leaving. I hope you can forgive me for the things I said. And I hope that somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, we will get to make those movies together after all. You were my greatest discovery. Working with you was the honor of my life. And nothing I ever said to journalists can change that truth. Goodbye, my friend, my partner, my Clint. Forever your director, Sergio. Clint read the letter twice, then a third time. The words blurred as tears streamed down his face. He didn't try to hide them. He didn't care anymore about looking strong. De Niro was crying too. Quietly, without sobs, just tears rolling down his cheeks as he watched Clint process 30 years of pain and regret in a single moment. "He loved you," De Niro said softly. "In his own way, in the only way he knew how. He loved you like a brother, and losing you destroyed him." Clint folded the letter carefully and pressed it against his chest. His voice, when it came, was broken. "I should have called him. After I turned down the role, I should have explained. I should have told him it wasn't about him. It was about me. About needing to grow. About being scared of getting stuck playing the same character forever." "Why didn't you?" De Niro asked. "Because I was young and stupid, and I thought there would always be time." Clint shook his head. "That's the lie we tell ourselves, isn't it? There's always more time. We can fix things tomorrow. We can make amends next year. And then suddenly 20 years have passed and someone's dead and all you have left are regrets." De Niro nodded. He understood. In this business, in this life, everyone understood eventually. "What do you do with this?" Clint asked, holding up the letter. "How do you make peace with someone who's not here anymore?" "You honor them," De Niro said. "You take what they taught you and you carry it forward. You tell the truth when they couldn't. You forgive them for being human, and you forgive yourself for the same thing." Clint was quiet for a long time. Outside, the party continued. Laughter and music and the endless performance of people who wanted things from each other. But in this small room, two men sat with something real, something raw, something that couldn't be faked. "I dedicated Unforgiven to him," Clint finally said. 2 years ago. Put his name in the credits, but I never explained why. Never told anyone what he meant to me. Maybe it's time you did." Clint looked at De Niro. Really looked at him. This man had carried a dead friend's letter for 5 years, waiting for the right moment. He'd kept a promise that no one would have blamed him for breaking. He'd done it because Sergio Leone had asked him to, and that was enough. "Thank you," Clint said, "for bringing me this, for keeping your word to him. He deserved that much. You both did." They sat together for another hour talking about Leone, sharing stories, remembering the man behind the legend. De Niro told Clint about the long nights on set, about Leone's obsessive attention to detail, about the way he'd watch the same shot 50 times before deciding if it was perfect. Clint told De Niro about Spain in 1964, about the language barrier and the hand gestures and the moment when Leone had looked at him and said, through a translator, "Stop acting, just be." "That changed everything for me," Clint admitted. "Every other director had wanted me to do more, emote more, perform more. Sergio was the first one who understood that sometimes less is everything. That's what he told me about you," De Niro said. "He said American actors were trained to fill every moment with action, but you understood that the empty spaces were just as important. The pauses, the silences. He said you could communicate more with a squint than most actors could with a monologue." Then why did he call it not acting? Why did he tell everyone I just yawned my way through films? De Niro smiled sadly. "Because pain makes us say cruel things about the people we love most. It's easier to diminish someone than to admit how much they meant to you." The party was winding down by the time they emerged from the study. Most of the guests had left. The mansion felt empty, quiet, like a theater after the audience has gone home. Clint and De Niro walked out to the garden together. The night air was cool, and the stars were visible for once, not drowned out by the city lights. "What happens now?" De Niro asked. "I don't know," Clint admitted. "But something's changed. Something I've been carrying for 30 years feels lighter now. Not gone, but lighter." "That's grief," De Niro said. "It never fully leaves. It just transforms, becomes part of who you are instead of something you're fighting against." Clint looked at the letter in his hand. He'd read it 4 times now, and he'd probably read it 400 more before he died. "Do you think he knew?" Clint asked. "When he wrote this, do you think he knew it would reach me?" "I think he hoped, and sometimes hope is enough." They shook hands, not the polite handshake of acquaintances, but the firm grip of men who'd shared something real. "If you ever want to talk about him," De Niro said, "call me. Any time. I mean it. I might take you up on that. I hope you do." De Niro walked to his car. Clint watched him go, then looked up at the stars. "I forgive you, Sergio," he said quietly, "and I hope you can forgive me too." The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked. The world kept moving, indifferent to the weight of one man's grief. But Clint felt it. The forgiveness, the peace, the knowledge that somewhere, somehow, Sergio Leone knew that the letter had reached its destination. 2 years later, Clint gave an interview about Unforgiven. For the first time, he talked about the dedication at the end, about what Leone had meant to him, about the guilt he'd carried for decades. "We had a complicated relationship," Clint said. "He made me a star, and I never properly thanked him for it. I turned down roles he offered. I moved on with my career and left him behind. And he said things about me that hurt, deeply, but at the end of the day, he was right about something. He saw something in me that nobody else saw. He gave me the chance when everyone else said no. And everything I've accomplished, everything I've built, started with him believing in me." The interviewer asked about the dedication. "I put his name in the credits because I wanted the world to know. Unforgiven wouldn't exist without Sergio Leone. I wouldn't exist without him. Not as a filmmaker, anyway. He taught me that Westerns could be art. He taught me that silence could be powerful. He taught me that the best acting is sometimes no acting at all." "Do you regret not reconciling with him before he died?" Clint paused, thought about the letter in his desk drawer at home, thought about the night in Beverly Hills when De Niro had given him something priceless. "Every day," Clint said, "but I've made peace with it. Sometimes you don't get to say goodbye. Sometimes you don't get to fix things. You just have to live with the choices you made and try to do better going forward. Sergio taught me that too, in his own way, even from the grave." The letter still sits in Clint's desk. He's never shown it to anyone else, never talked about it publicly. But on the anniversary of Leone's death, every year, he reads it again. And somewhere in the quiet moments between films and awards and the endless demands of a legendary career, Clint Eastwood thinks about a night in 1994 when Robert De Niro walked up to him at a party and said, "I need to talk to you." That's how forgiveness works sometimes. It doesn't come when you expect it. It doesn't arrive in the form you imagined. It shows up at a Hollywood party, carried by a man who kept a promise, delivered through a letter from someone who couldn't say the words while he was alive. 30 years of pain. One envelope. 2 men crying in a study while the party went on without them. And finally, after all that time, peace. That's the story of Clint Eastwood and Sergio Leone. Not the version in the history books, not the quotes in the magazines, the real story, the one about love and pride and the terrible cost of leaving things unsaid. They never got to make those films together. The Siege of Leningrad, Don Quixote, all those dreams that died when Clint walked away. But maybe, in whatever comes after this life, they're making them now. Maybe that's enough.